Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to episode 3 of Going Wide, the video series where I attempt to convince you to seek out indie ebook sources that aren't Amazon by trying them out myself first. And if it sounds like I'm talking like a late night radio host right now, it's because my trachea has been lambasted with a hacking cough, and I'm hoping that by talking quietly, not only will I save myself the ache, but my voice won't sound as terrible for you. But rest assured, I'm super excited about what we're talking about today. Now, you may remember that episode 2 did not go super well for me. Smashwords was my choice paralysis hell, just way too many options. And at the time, I didn't have the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do to help guide my choices. But I decided, as a counterpoint to that, to go with a hyper-curated source, aka an indie press. I have started compiling a list of indie presses who offer ebooks directly through their site. Not every indie press does, but if you know of one and you think should be added to my list for a future taste test, it would probably be far in the future. There's actually a surprisingly large amount of indie presses that sell direct. Please let me know down in the comments. But for this one, I went with a tried and true indie press, aka a gay one. Queen of Swords Press is based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and was created by the author Catherine Lundoff. And I swear this name is so familiar to me. I was looking through my email to see if she'd sent me a review request. I didn't find anything, but I also might have deleted things. Or else I just saw her name around a lot, the various writer internet. But I was immediately drawn to the fact that all of the protagonists of their books have some kind of queer protagonist, and in a lot of different ways, as we'll discuss. But also this site was just really nice to read through, and the ebooks are really fairly priced, even buying directly from them, because sometimes I've noticed that can make the prices get a little wonky, but thankfully really easy to buy from it. You get the email with 2 links for each book, an EPUB and a Mobi, and so pretty easy use. And I'm not the most tech-savvy person. So the press site itself, pretty simplistic. And in all honesty, I would love to tell you that, I spent so long really thinking about which books would be the best representation of the site. But in the end, I went with ones that fulfilled prompts for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. Every book I picked counted for 2 prompts in Herked, and they all ended up being minis, which is this press's name for novellas, which was strange for me. I'm not usually a novella person, but I did make sure to include at least one book from Catherine Lundoff because I figured, creator and makes up a lot of the library, so it would make sense. But without further ado, let's jump into the books themselves. First up is Out of This World by Catherine Lundoff. This is a short story collection by the owner of the press. And in case you're wondering, I picked this because it had magic users in it, or at least I could tell that it would, for the magic users prompt in Spooky Creatures in Herked, and also it had the word world in the title, which I need for my quote, if you're a Herked nerd. Herked nerd? Anyway, this is a short story collection encompassing a large variety of types of stories, mostly speculative, but kind of running the gambit, and all queer in one way or another. The only real issue that I had with it was when the story was based on something else, it assumed a level of knowledge that I did not have. And so there were very clearly moments that were supposed to be not necessarily surprise reveals, but had the air of, aha, this thing. And I did not catch it. I don't know enough about, Shakespeare's family or Tamlin to really get the gist of it. But the short stories that were not based on pre-existing knowledge were my favorite, particularly the one about a prince who's not really a prince, but also extra a prince. A little bit confusing to explain, but I think that one was my favorite just for sheer, like, I have to find out. I have to know. It had the most drama, and if there's one thing you need to know about me, I love the melodrama. I need it in my stories. So overall, a pretty good cohesive collection, I would say. That's always a big thing for me. I don't want to feel any kind of metaphorical whiplash when I am going through a short story collection, and this one was pretty solid. I would be open to reading more about the author's work in other, not necessarily retelling contexts, but like the original work. I do know she has written a book about menopausal werewolves, where the women of this town hit werewolfness when they're menopausal, and the premise alone. But for the most part, it's still a pretty solid pick if you like short story collections, but you will probably get more out of it than me if you understand the references. Up next is The Voyages of Sinrak the Dapper by A.J. Fitzwater. I was primarily drawn to this one because it has an all-humanoid animal cast, and then I discovered that the author is from New Zealand, so it fulfills the Oceania prompt from the Around the World mini challenge. As for what prompt I fulfilled it for the animal challenge, that was so hard because they're clearly their own sentient beings, but I eventually went with exotic pets because they have things like capybaras and chinchillas, and I was like, sure. Like, these don't really count as wild animals. They're all wearing clothes. And, you know, a kraken would be a pretty exotic pet. But this follows our titular Sinrak the Dapper, who is a pirate, as she does kind of pirate things. It's definitely one of those, we have entirely changed the meaning of the word pirate, because in this book, the first rule of being a pirate is being honest. Okay? But it's very fantastical, almost leading into magical realism. It's actually a series of short stories chronologically the titular character's endeavors into becoming a pirate, and then, you know, developing a polycule and other daring do's that kind of earned her name. And yes, she is called the Dapper because she is always in, you know, very well dressed with bow ties and kind of mask clothing. There's also a trans chinchilla, if you ever needed that in your life. And I loved specifically the most was the writing style in the dialogue, because it was one of those, how many slang words can we invent? And I always love invented slang words. Okay. The young girl that watched Xenon and literally wanted all of the slang from Xenon, girl of the 21st century, to become real. It still lives on. Zetus Lapidus, I want it to happen. Just make new slang. It was a little bit much for my brain to comprehend with all the magical realismness, but that's more of a me thing. The sky in the ocean part especially I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to be imagining right there. But I loved the reveal of who the great mother of capybaras is, and that whole reveal. And I did enjoy the trans chinchilla. That's true. And when it got all magical realism, I just kind of accepted, like, oh, okay, I don't know what we're doing here, but cool. There's a moth moon and a paper moon. I don't know what that words mean together, but they sound poetic. We'll go with it. I have saved my absolute favorite for last, and I'm so mad that I can't get loud right now, because when I tell you I love this book, that I have been waiting so long for a book with this specific premise, I mean it. I have already nominated it for the Indie Ink Awards, so you would have seen it if you watched that video. Yes, link in the description. But it is also going to make my top books of the entire year, and that is The Language of Roses by Heather Rose Jones. This is an aromantic Beauty and the Beast retelling. I have been waiting. I have been waiting so long for a Beauty and the Beast retelling that's not a romance, that actually like reinterprets what our Belle insert would be actually going through, and it did not disappoint. It has a lot of the same usual build-ups. It is the more classic Beauty and the Beast retelling where Belle has sisters that are not, as morally good as her, but she has kind of taken over taking care of them. But also, very interesting point here is that our Beast insert actually has a sister who was turned into a moving statue, and as the curse continues, is losing more and more of her movement and more of her ability to do magic. And so on one hand, she should want our plot to go through and our Belle insert to fall in love. But also, she knows the kind of spoiled person her brother is, and she can't in good conscience wish that on someone else. But as you discover, she's not the only life that hangs in the balance. There aren't really a lot of servants. The ones that are there are invisible beings that don't really exist on their own. They're controlled by the sister, but there is another person in the shadows that you discover. And there is a sapphic side romance. There is some realizations about, parentage that I always love with my love of melodrama. But just in general, I love the idea of the kind of pressure Belle felt, or our Belle insert. And how, being a beast wouldn't necessarily change a person for the better. And I also loved how you actually get to see more into the sorceress insert, and you find out that she's also not the greatest person. She was more doing it for petty revenge than any actual desire to make him change. She just had to give him an out because the magic demands it. The moral grayness of this book was chef's kiss. The atmosphere was perfect, and I loved having an asexual, aromantic protagonist. I am gray ace, which means I am in a weird situationship with my own libido. It comes and goes as it pleases, and I may not see it for weeks sometimes. But seeing a story that had a lot of the trappings of a Beauty and the Beast retelling without the need for the romance was so good. I did end up picking this for, what prompts? Oh, obviously the Ace Arrow prompt for the queer mini challenge of Herkied, and it was published in 2022, which I needed for the last 10 years prompt. So it's like a triple win, right? I read it for this video, I read it for Herkied, and it was just a really good book that I love. That is it, my taste test for Queen of Swords, and I am so happy at how well this turned out because my last one was so iffy. But not only do I want to go and get more books from Queen of Swords Press, I already know the specific next one I'm going to get because they very recently released a gay vampire book. And I mean, redundant, but gay vampires. And I, in general, would highly recommend this press for all of your book needs. I really hope that this wasn't too terrible of a video to watch with my voice. I am normally a very theatrical person, so trying to keep myself very chill was surprisingly hard, but I swear the vocal fry is not being done on purpose. I am not Ned Fulmer, I'm just sick. Regardless, if you know of any other indie presses that sell digital books directly to the consumer through their site, please let me know down in the comments. I will add it to my list. Again, it will probably be a very long time. I will not be putting out another one of these before the end of the year just because, that December end of year content time is so stacked. But I definitely want to get back to this sooner rather than later with more indie presses because I love having a high sense of curation that once I know I like the press, it's really easy to go back because I know that I already like what their editors do. So thank you so much for watching. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.